DC, Gotham anti-hero rises with ultimate powers. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 1. Mildew Country, Gotham City by night. In an apartment room, a teenager nearly 25 years old is sitting on the couch watching a TV report on the recent massacre in Gotham City. Recently, a restaurant was broken into by a group of robbers during its business, and there was a shooting incident, resulting in the death of a total of 12 people. Fortunately, Batman arrived at the scene and avoided more people being killed by the robbers. The news on TV said so, and the teenager also knew what world he had crossed into, an extremely dangerous world called DC World. And it's not over. His name is Jiang Li, and he is now in one of the most dangerous cities in the DC world, the famous Gotham City. Crimes will occur here in a few days, and there will be all kinds of crimes, whether it is robbery or homicide and so on. It's been more than a decade since he crossed over to a 7-year-old boy of Chinese descent with the same name and surname as him. The good news is that Bruce Wayne and Zatara have been childhood sweethearts since childhood, and the bad news is that they were born in Gotham City and have no parents. But fortunately, he had a check-in clock-in system, and when he crossed to Gotham, he had already checked in and got the super soldier serum of Captain Mildew. As soon as he got the system, he had automatically integrated the super soldier serum into Jiang Li's body, and his body had been quacking since he was a child. He wanted to check into other cities, such as Metropolis or Central City, but the system did not respond. Maybe there are triggers, and it can be said that he has not encountered anything, not even happened. The only thing that may have happened is the death of Bruce Wayne's parents, who were not present. Jiang Li, who is a crosser, only remembers the plot of DC movies, and basically knows nothing about everything except the character settings. Jiang Li secretly regretted it. He knew that he would cross it, so he made up for DC's story timeline in advance. Bump bump. Just as Jiang Li was deep in thought, there was a sudden knock on the door of his room. Who? Jiang Li shouted, but except for the sound of the TV's news channel, no one in the entire space responded to him, which made Jiang Li frown. If it were another city, he might not feel anything, but this is Gotham, and if you let your guard down, you may die. Even if he is now a superhuman equivalent to the captain of the Moldy Country, he will still die if he gets a bullet on the brain. Jiang Li slowly stood up, did not make a very obvious sound, slowly came to the door, and picked up the baseball bat placed next to the door. Jiang Li's eyes froze, slowly put his hand on the doorknob, and after silently counting for 3 seconds in his heart, he quickly opened the door and swung the baseball bat in his other hand towards the front. Spell. In the next second, a beautiful female voice suddenly sounded, and a spell composed of English counterwords was launched. Jiang Li's body and the baseball bat in his hand were floating uncontrollably in the air, but Jiang Li did not have a panicked expression on his face, but was relieved, because he knows who is coming. Xiaoza, there's no need to pretend to be a ghost like this, right? Jiang Li said a little helplessly. I saw a beautiful woman with long black hair standing at the door. She was wearing an extremely beautiful black dress, and the light makeup on her face showed that she wanted to meet someone very important to her heart. The full name of the visitor is Zatara, who is a childhood sweetheart that Jiang Li has known and played with since he was a child, plus a rich son surnamed Wayne. He has a good relationship with Zatana, whether it is elementary school, junior high school, or even high school, and he goes to public school with Zatana. Zatana pouted cute little mouth, a little angry, and said, I finally ran out of the house. I want to surprise you. You actually want to hit my head with a baseball bat? Jiang Li naturally didn't care about the loss, so he spoke. Do you know where this is? This is Gotham. A murder happens in a few weeks or even days, and if you knock on the door and don't respond, people will inevitably not be suspicious. Gotham's crime rate is one of the highest in the entire country, and it is not even an exaggeration to say that it is the first place. As long as it is a person living in Gotham, he will be wary of living, let alone the Crossers River. After listening, Zatana thought about it as if it were something like this. Well, this time it's my problem. In the next second, Zatana waved her hand casually, and Jiang Li's body slowly flew down and gently landed on her sofa. After the little oolong passed, Zatana also smiled and said to Jiang Li, long time no see, leave. After that, Zatana trotted over directly and hugged Jiang Li very closely, and her whole body was close to Jiang Li. Long time no see, Xiaoza. It's been 2 years since he and Zatana were last separated, and Zatana was brought home by her father, Zatara, to train anti-speech magic. Maybe Zatana escaped very cleverly, or maybe it was Zatara's secret acquiescence. In short, after 2 years, Zatana also met her favorite person. You don't know how much I've missed you in the past 2 years. I know. Holding so hard, I can't wait to merge into one. I know how much you miss me. Jiang Li thought so. In the next second, the system in my head suddenly reacted and made a long-lost sound. Sign into Zatana and get extraordinary magic. Extraordinary mana, obtain magic physique and full level affinity, greatly increase the host's own maximum mana value, and automatically restore mana over time. Jiang Li was overjoyed after hearing this, and the system that had been silent for a long time finally reacted today, and Jiang Li couldn't help but hold Zatana's pretty face and kiss her fiercely on the side of her face. I saw Zatana's little face suddenly reddened. She had never been kissed by a boy since she was a child, but now she was kissed by a person she liked the most. Zatana's reaction made Jiang Li laugh for a while. This little girl is really shy. Xiaoza, let's go out for a walk. Well. Episode 2. In the dim night, Gotham City's neon lights are the only embellished of this Sin City, and there are lights in the sky, equivalent to the iconic bat lights. I said leave, you don't need to be so vigilant, do you? Zatana was speechless for a while. From going out until now, Jiang Li was always vigilant, for fear that someone would suddenly come out and give him a shot. The eyes kept looking left and right, and when they arrived at the dimly lit alley, they were all cautious with their feet. Zatana herself is one of the strongest magicians in the world. She feels unnecessary, but Jiang Li feels the need. The horror of Gotham is already ingrained. Xiaoza, this is what you don't understand. I'm thinking about our safety, although you are a magician. But your body is a mortal fetus with the naked eye after all. No matter how strong Zatana's magic is, she is a fragile human being, and eating a bullet is no different from ordinary people. So Jiang Li is not only thinking about himself, but also for the sake of his childhood sweetheart, Zatana. Alas, what else can Zatana say? She can only accompany him. As the two walked, they came to a park, and the two sat down on the park bench and enjoyed the rare moonlight above the Gotham sky together. No matter how Zatana said that it was a period of love, she couldn't help but start to fall in love immediately, and began to secretly peek at the boy next to her with her eyes. The fingers of the jade hand began to feel uneasy, gently rubbing against each other. To be honest, in fact, she and Jiang Li did not have a certain relationship. Don't see that she and Jiang Li are so close, then in fact, it has been like this with him since childhood. Once it was too intimate, like kissing or something, she couldn't help but become shy, as she had done in the apartment before. For 2 years, Zatana secretly decided that after the reunion, she must confess and tell him her feelings, and then she can go further. But that's easier said than done. Really, as soon as it comes to practice, the heartbeat can't help but accelerate, and I start to tense up. Away. Zatana was just about to say something with a red face, but was interrupted by Jiang Li turning around. Xiaoza, can you teach me magic? Alas, the good emotions that were finally brewed were so broken by Jiang Li's straight male blow, as if a basin of cold water was poured. Humph, snap. As if venting her anger, Zatana slapped her small hand on Jiang Li's head. Ouch, what are you doing, Xiaoza? Jiang Li was stunned by a sudden slap. If he didn't teach, he wouldn't teach. Why did he still beat people? Of course, Jiang Li is not a completely straight man. If he sees Zatana's self-struggling expression, he will definitely know what this little girl wants to do. Leave, you're such a big idiot. After Zatana blushed and whispered, she said to Jiang Li, first of all, you must have a physique that can use magic. If you don't have this physique, even if I teach you, it's okay, you can just discipline it. Alright. Subsequently, Zatana seriously talked to Jiang Li about the basics of magic, and the magic she taught Jiang Li was naturally the anti-verbal magic she used. I don't know how long it took. Jiang Li finally learned some fur, so he mobilized a trace of magic in his body. Spell. Well, 2 flames appeared on Jiang Li's 2 palms in a blink of an eye, and the flames shone on Jiang Li's overjoyed face, which showed how happy he was. Zatana's big eyes were good-looking. She was completely shocked. It could be said that Jiang Li was the most qualified person she had ever seen. At that time, her first contact with anti-speech magic took several weeks to learn, but Jiang Li only took less than 2 hours. Immediately, Zatana pinched Jiang Li's face. Say, did you learn it a long time ago? Just make me happy. Of course not. Today is my first contact with magic, and I don't have the money to cheat you. Hearing this, Zatana looked at Jiang Li with skeptical eyes, and after looking at it for a while, she was sure that Jiang Li was not lying. Then your qualifications are amazing. I have never met anyone who learned magic in more than an hour. That's still good for you to teach. If someone else teaches me, I may not be able to learn it for months. It seems that Jiang Li's rainbow fart is very useful to Zatana, making Zatana squint and hold her chest and tilt her head and say, of course, I am Zatana, and the world cannot find a second magician like me. A touch of pampering flashed in Jiang Li's eyes, and then his face gradually approached Zatana's face. Zatana suddenly reacted, and suddenly blushed shyly, and the closer Jiang Li's face was to her head, the more she retreated. You, what are you doing? Xiaoza, be my girlfriend. In an instant, Jiang Li's words made Zatana's eyes widen slightly, and her head suddenly fell into a state of downtime, except for her small blushing. Jiang Li smiled slightly. How could he not know the mind of the girl in front of him? How could I keep ignoring her if she had feelings? Poof. Zatana hugged Jiang Li, her face buried deep in Jiang Li's arms. Jiang Li caressed Zatana's black hair and said with a smile, you promised? I really. So happy. After speaking, Zatana slowly raised her head from Jiang Li's arms, looked at the boy she liked with affectionate eyes, and then took the initiative to offer her kiss to Jiang Li. The moon seemed to witness that they loved each other, and a moonlight shone on them, forming a beautiful embellishment. Episode 3. Alas, now it's time to separate again. Zatana had just received news that her father Zatara had told her to go home and continue her rebellion magic. This time, it was not Zatana who cleverly found a way to escape, but Zatara turned a blind eye and let go, and now he is almost permissive. Separation is for the next better reunion. All Jiang Li can do is comfort Zatana as much as possible. After all, he can't rob someone with his future father-in-law. I'll miss you, away. Me too, Xiaoza. Spell. As the anti-verbal magic was activated, a white swirling portal appeared behind Zatana. With a reluctant gaze, Zatana gradually retreated until the whole person entered the portal. After Zatana passed through the portal, she had returned to the Western-style house, which was her home. I saw that the man here, Zatara, was sitting on the sofa, holding the newspaper in his hand and looking at the content on it, without looking at Zatana. You're back. How was your boyfriend tonight? If you hadn't bothered, we'd all be on the last step. Zatana pouted and thought to herself. Later, Zatana talked about how she and Jiang Li spent the night. After Zatara listened, he couldn't help but frown, because he heard the message that he had learned anti-verbal magic in an hour, and apparently he had never seen or even heard of such a person. Next time you have a chance, bring him back for a meal. Hearing this, Zatana couldn't help but look overjoyed. He knew that his father had begun to be interested in Jiang Li. As long as Jiang Li passed his father's test, he believed that the day of marriage and having a baby was not far away. Zatana couldn't help but fantasize. Zatara naturally knew what his daughter was thinking, and he couldn't help but shake his head, feeling a little headache about his daughter's love brain. At home, I was afraid that my daughter would be bored, so I brought back a novel and other entertainment books to Zatana, and after that, Zatana held the book every day and looked out the window and blushed. Zatara secretly said sorry to his deceased wife, who seemed to have damaged his daughter. In Gotham City, Jiang Li looked at the portal until it disappeared before turning to leave. Jiang Li couldn't help but think as he walked back to his apartment. When he came to Gotham City in the DC world, it was the first time he triggered the check-in clock-in, and after more than 10 years, he triggered the check-in again on Zatana. It can be said that at present, it seems that the system's check-in will only trigger in famous places and characters. What are the conditions? Jiang Li frowned and thought, and after 2 or 3 minutes, Jiang Li's mind suddenly flashed. It seems that the representative figures of the city determine whether the check-in is successful, such as the current Metropolitan Superman and the Central City Flash, etc. have not officially appeared. Therefore, it did not trigger success. And as for why Gotham was able to succeed that year, perhaps because Bruce Wayne was born from the moment he encountered in Crime Alley. It seems that I have roughly figured out the rules. Jiang Li was in a good mood and began to think about how to check in on Bruce Wayne, that is, Batman. But just as Jiang Li was passing through a dark alley, he heard a voice coming from inside. Hand over the rich things, chick. Okay, sir, please calm down first, I will give you the money. A robbery is taking place inside, and it is not impossible that in combination with the fact that it is a woman who is robbed, it may even develop into another criminal case. Jiang Li looked around with his afterlight, not that no one heard the sound inside, but they all chose to ignore it very tacitly, because they didn't know if the gangsters inside had any lethal weapons. Sure enough, it is Gotham City with simple folk customs. Alas, it's troublesome. Under the gaze of the Gotham citizens looking at the warriors, Jiang Li walked into the dark alley. That silly hat, get out of here quickly. Don't force Lao Tzu to kick your second brother. The gangster was immediately upset when he heard this, and turned around with a fierce and evil expression, so he saw Jiang Li's figure that was more than a head taller than him. In an instant, the gangster took a step back a little subconsciously, and then thought about it, but the gangster had a knife and a gun in his hand. Wouldn't he lose the face of the Gotham criminal when he retreated? Boy, are you really stupid or fake stupid? Learn heroes to save beauty? Saying that, the gangster also deliberately shook the small dagger in his hand in front of Jiang Li, trying to scare the other party. Wait, he's my brother, he's not in good spirits. Then the blonde woman who was robbed was a little anxious when she saw this, and quickly came to Jiang Li's side and said to the gangster. After speaking, the blonde woman secretly pulled the corner of Jiang Li's clothes and motioned for him to act together. But seeing that Jiang Li was indifferent, the blonde woman was a little anxious, and secretly said in a belly next to Jiang Li, he not only has a knife, but also a gun. Jiang Li first glanced at the blonde woman, and then quickly grabbed the wrist of the gangster holding the small dagger, and immediately twisted it fiercely. Click! A crisp sound sounded, and the gangster's wrist was instantly twisted. A strong pain hit the gangster's nerves, causing him to fall to his knees and begin begging for mercy. The gangster's plea for mercy is fake, and the drawing of a gun is real. Go and die. Jiang Li naturally saw the other party's trick, and a horizontal kick hit the gangster, and the gangster's body flew sideways against the wall, and then fell to the ground unconscious. Oh my god. The blonde woman looked at this scene stupidly. She didn't expect Jiang Li to be able to fight so well. Jiang Li turned around, and only then formally looked at the blonde woman who was saved by him, wearing a white coat like a doctor, beautiful blonde hair tied up in a ponytail, and gold wire glasses that are not very high. He looks very quiet. The face is also quite good looking, at least much better than those internet celebrity faces, and it looks very natural. Jiang Li suddenly saw the sign hanging on the woman's white coat, and only saw a familiar name, Harleen Quinn. Maybe someone doesn't know Harleen Quinn's name, but they must know her name after the name change, that is, Harley Quinn, famous clown girl. Jiang Li grabbed Harleen's wrist without hesitation, which made Harleen couldn't help but be startled, and subconsciously thought that the other party was someone who had bad intentions for her. If it weren't for the fact that there was no special expression on the other party's face, she would have slapped it a long time ago. And Jiang Li is also convinced in his heart that the character's check-in must be after the other party has a certain ability, such as the Flash has a Godspeed. Harleen must become Harley as a clown girl, so that he can check in on the other party. Episode 4. Harleen was held by Jiang Li's wrist, because the other party's hand was too strong, which made her inevitably feel pain. But after thinking about it, Jiang Li could be regarded as her lifesaver no matter how she said, and the disrespectful action just now was put aside by her. So Harleen stretched out her white jade hand and said to Jiang Li with a smile, "My name is Harleen Questle. It's nice to meet you, Jiang Li." Jiang Li shook hands with Harleen and said, "This name turned out to be from Chong country." Harleen said with a hint of curiosity in her eyes, "You were so able to fight just now. Is it because you can rush the country?" Jiang Li said, and compared with 2 fingers too specifically, indicating that there was really only a little. Jiang Li naturally will not refuse, if he makes friends with Harleen, when she becomes Harley the clown girl in the future. He will also be convenient to sign in and punch on the other party. On the way, they were also chatting with each other. "Leave, what do you do?" Seeing this, Jiang Li laughed and joked, "8 folds is too little, can you give me a discount?" Harleen naturally knew that the other party was joking with her, and stared at the beautiful eyes with her waist in her waist, so she said angrily, "You really want to be beautiful? I broke your bones almost the same." The two talked and laughed so happily, just like real friends. Obviously they had just known each other for a long time. Because Harley Quinn is honestly a little miserable, it can be said that the Joker has never loved Harley at all, and he is very disgusted with the pudding or Mr. J that Harley calls him. For the Joker, Harley is nothing more than a toy tool man who does some crazy and bloody games. However, who knew that in the next second, the iron gate of the mall suddenly fell, locking the entire mall to death, and no one could escape. Except for Jiang Li, who remained calm. Passers-by began to panic, because they knew in their hearts that generally such a thing would not be a good thing. What happened? Harleen also began to get a little scared because of the panic around her. Jiang Li frowned and looked around. He had some bad premonitions, and he always felt that something bad would happen. Hiss! The sound of suspected gas leakage appeared in Jiang Li's ears, which made Jiang Li's face change greatly. Touch! Jiang Li smashed the glass with an elbow, handed the gas mask to Harleen, and took one himself. Although Harleen was a little puzzled by Jiang Li's operation, out of trust, Harleen also put the gas mask on her face without delay. After the two put on the poisoned masks, they walked out of the store together, and they soon saw that a terrifying scene had begun to appear in the mall. The cloudy mist began to fill the air, and after some of the first passers-by inhaled it, the blood vessels in the face had begun to turn dark brown. Bloodshot eyes covered and looked extremely red, and passers-by who had not been hit for the time being looked at their friends a little strangely, so they spoke. "Hey, man, are you alright?" But when his inquiry reached the ears of the person who was recruited, it was a strange squeaking sound, like the sound of a zombie in a movie. The latter raised his red eyes and looked at his companion, and his face suddenly changed, because he saw what he was most afraid of, that is, zombies. Don't come here." Passers-by suddenly softened their feet, sat on the ground, and shouted. His hands were already looking for something nearby to defend himself, and it was normal to defend himself because he was afraid. "Man, what's wrong with you?" "Ah." His companion suddenly suffered a baseball bat from the opponent in the head. The steel baseball bat that hit it with all its strength directly dented the head of the inquiring passerby, and blood was spilled on the spot in an instant. The passerby who was recruited did not know that he had killed his friend, and looked around with a baseball bat with a face full of fear. How are they all zombies? In his eyes, all the passers-by around him have turned into terrifying and hideous zombies in the movie. Not only him, many passers-by who have been tricked have seen that the other party has become what they are most afraid of, and they have picked up their own defensive weapons. Knives, guns, and clubs, all that can hurt people have been taken out, because the best way to eliminate fear is to eliminate fear. The scene began to fall into chaos, and in the eyes of normal people, they were killing each other like they were desperate, forming a bloody and cruel azure field. Although Jiang Li is not a good person, he does not want to save these cannibalistic people without benefits, but he also does not want to wait for rescue in the same place. Wait for Gotham strips that don't have a good cop besides Gordon? Or the Batman Bruce Wayne, who is so busy with crime that he doesn't know if he can come in time. Then it's better to save yourself. He has to find out the Scarecrow. Episode 5. Harleen, you're staying here. After Jiang Li had a clear goal, he turned around and put his hands on Harleen's shoulders and said to her, "I'm going to deal with the culprit in this matter." When Harleen heard that Jiang Li was going to leave her, she immediately shook her head hurriedly and said, No, you can't leave me. I'm afraid." Seeing that Harleen was so dependent on herself, Jiang Li couldn't help sighing in his heart. Let's not talk about how dangerous the Scarecrow is. The Scarecrow, because Batman will definitely find some unlucky eggs as thugs to protect himself. If Harleen goes with her, it will be difficult to do it in the battle, both to face the enemy and to protect Harleen. Then it is better to let her hide. Jiang Li picked up a wooden hammer next to him. He tried the quality enough for Harleen to protect herself, and then handed the wooden hammer to Harleen. "Harleen, if someone approaches you and wants to hurt you, you take this hammer and smash it. Remember not to hesitate and leave no effort." What Jiang Li didn't know was that his actions completely changed Harleen's future. Here, then you have to come back quickly." Seeing that Jiang Li insisted on going, Harleen couldn't help but clench the wooden hammer in her hand and said to Jiang Li, "Well, I promise I'll be back." As soon as the words fell, Harleen took the initiative to hug Jiang Li. Even Jiang Li was stunned, and after hugging for 5 seconds, Harleen also took the initiative to separate. Then, he ran into the store, hid under the counter, and quietly waited for Jiang Li's return. Alas, what a good girl. Seeing that Harleen was like this, the less he wanted Harleen to become Harley. These things can only be thought about later, Jiang Li turned around and ran to the interior of the mall. Gotham Mall is a big mall with only 3 floors, and I have to find the best place to release the poison gas. He remembered that there were many ventilators on the roof of the Gotham Mall, which was probably the best place for scarecrows to release poison gas. And just when Jiang Li went to the roof, something happened on Harleen's side, who was hiding. Just as Harleen was hiding under the counter, nearly 10 minutes had passed since Jiang left. The more she listened to the screams and fights from outside, the faster Harleen's heart beat, and she couldn't help but clench the wooden hammer in her hand, and began to pray in her heart for Jiang Li's safety and early return. Tap. Suddenly Harleen heard footsteps, was nervous and missed Jiang Li, and she subconsciously thought that Jiang Li had returned. Leave. Just when Harleen stood up happily and turned her head to look at the source of the footsteps, she saw not Jiang Li in her heart. It was a man covered in blood. His eyes were red at this time, his face was bruised, and there was a distinct dark brown in the veins on his face. Apparently, he was also a victim of fear gas. Harleen's shouts were also heard by the man, who turned his head to see Harleen, and he saw not a blonde beauty, but a monster with sharp teeth in its mouth. There's another one here. Ah. When the man saw Harleen, it was like seeing a big enemy, and he immediately picked up the fire axe in his hand and rushed towards Harleen. Ugh. Harleen quickly dodged. Fortunately, the man's physical strength consumed in the previous fight was almost the same, otherwise Harleen would have difficulty dodging this axe. The man panted, turned to look back at Harleen, about to launch his next attack. Don't. Harleen glanced at the wooden hammer in her hand, and then at the man in front of her who had red eyes and wanted to take her life. Don't hold back, Harleen, think about what I'm going to do for you. After some struggle in her heart, she also decided not to retreat, because she thought of what Jiang Li had said to her. AAA Harleen shouted, then raised the wooden hammer and smashed it on the man's head accurately and powerfully. Bang! A heavy blow suddenly smashed the man's head, and blood even splattered on Harleen's hand. Then the man fell in his own blood, and he could no longer die. Harleen, who knew that she had killed someone, threw the blood-stained wooden hammer on the ground in shock, still trembling, and looked at the blood on her hands. I did it. Leave. The corners of Harleen's mouth began to rise slightly. She did it. She fulfilled Jiang Li's advice to her, and for some reason, she actually began to have a trace in her heart. Excitement, the excitement of killing someone. And the other side, Jiang Li came to the roof of the Gotham Mall, and sure enough, he saw where the Scarecrow who was like a sack on his head released fear poison gas. Huh? Not a bat? Who are you? The Scarecrow saw Jiang Li's figure and questioned, but Jiang Li didn't want to stay where he was to answer him, but began to run and rushed towards the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow was naturally guarded, and suddenly several tall and strong men ran from the side, their eyes were red, and after seeing Jiang Li, they rushed over like crazy. They were naturally not Jiang Li's opponents, and everyone fell directly to the ground with a punch. But as soon as Jiang Li turned around, the Scarecrow's figure had disappeared, and there was no one on the empty roof except him and the passers-by on the ground. It's just that the Scarecrow's fear potion and gasification device are still on the ground, and Jiang Li stepped forward to directly smash the potion and device, and after confirming it again, Jiang Li had to turn around and leave. After all, there was still Harleen waiting for him to go back. In fact, what Jiang Li didn't know was that there was this tall crane not far away, and there was a black figure at the highest part of the crane looking down below. Ah. Let me go. Bat. The Scarecrow was hung upside down by Batman on a crane, and his mouth was full of invectives against Batman. And Batman was indifferent to this. Just now he took the Scarecrow away, although he was surprised why Jiang Li was here. But the point is that he knew that the Scarecrow fell into Jiang Li's hands, either dead or crippled. Growing up together, he knew very well that Jiang Li's heart was cruel, and at the same time, he didn't want Jiang Li to have blood on his hands, and it was not worth it to go to prison for scum like a Scarecrow. Although his hands were already stained with blood, he also helped him make an alibi. The police have arrived, and to avoid the worst, he rescues the Scarecrow and then plans to send him to jail with his own hands. Episode 6. When Jiang Li returned to the bloody first floor, the Gotham police arrived belatedly, and the red and blue light of the police car shrouded the entire mall. Although they are late, except for a very small number of people, including Gordon, who will mourn for those who have lost their lives, most of the Gotham police are glad that they are late, because they also don't want to go head-to-head with the terrifying Gotham villain. Jiang Li soon saw Harleen's figure. She was sitting on the ground holding her legs, and she still had the wooden hammer Jiang Li gave her in her arms. The keen Jiang Li detected the blood stains on the wooden hammer, and he had already guessed what was happening. Harleen. Jiang Li walked up to Harleen and knelt down on one knee in front of her, not knowing how to comfort her. Harleen heard Jiang Li's voice, and suddenly her originally dull face became cheerful, and she hugged Jiang Li after raising her head. Leave, I'm so scared. Can you not leave me? Harleen was like a frightened little girl, huddled in the arms. She thought Jiang Li was full of security. Jiang Li didn't understand Harleen's meaning for the first time, just patted Harleen's back and said comfortingly, "It's okay already, I won't leave you again." Jiang Li didn't know that the corners of Harleen's mouth were about to crack with a smile at this time, hiding in Jiang Li's arms and secretly rejoicing. Shall we? Suddenly, a somewhat vicissitude's voice came from behind Jiang Li, Jiang Li knew who called his name. It is the famous Gotham singled-out king, the father of Jiang Li college classmate Barbara Gordon's father, Gotham Sheriff James Gordon. Why are you here? Uncle Gordon, my friend and I are both victims and survivors of this murder, and my friend is terrified. Jiang Li helped the frightened Harleen to stand up and explain the situation to Gordon. Gordon nodded. He naturally believed Jiang Li's words. As one of his daughter's best friends, he had also sat at his house many times, and he knew very well how Jiang Li was. Although his daughter has some other feelings, these are all young people's affairs, and Gordon is not good to interfere, only to give some opinions to people who come over. That's a blessing in misfortune. Shelley, you take your friends out first, we still have to deal with the scene here. At that time, I will inform you and your friends to come to the police station for a process. Yes, Uncle Gordon. Gordon looked at the back of Jiang Li helping Harleen out of the mall, and he was a little hesitant, but for the sake of his daughter, he picked up his mobile phone and sent her a text message. If you don't act, love won't die. In fact, what Gordon didn't know was that Jiang Li had already been preempted at this time. After walking out of the mall, Jiang Li still wanted to say something to Harleen, who was afraid, when suddenly the mobile phone in his pocket rang. Jingle bell, Jiang Li picked up and saw that it was Zatana's call. Jiang Li did not dare not answer his girlfriend's call. Harleen, you wait for me to answer the phone first. After speaking, Jiang walked away, connected the phone, and talked to Zatana. And Harleen couldn't help but change her face, and the corners of her upturned mouth began to curve downward, because she heard Jiang Li call the person in the mobile phone as Xiaoza. Such a nickname is a girl, and it seems to be very intimate. It is worthy of being a woman in love, and she can hear what Jiang Li is saying from such a distance. Harleen couldn't help but ignite a flame called jealousy in her heart, and gradually clenched the wooden hammer that Jiang Li gave her in her hand, and a ridiculous idea appeared in her mind. It's better to knock him out now, and then take him back to be locked up and raised, so that she will be alone. But soon this thought disappeared into Harleen's mind. Jiang was too late to love her. How could she hurt the other party? Well, bye. I finally broke free from Zatana's sugar-coated shells, and after hanging up the phone, I turned around and saw Harleen with a smile on her face. Jiang Li was puzzled for a while. Just now Harleen was like a frightened rabbit, but now she was smiling like a brilliant flower. Have you been on the phone for so long? So much so that Harleen didn't need comfort, and she eased up. Harleen, how are you feeling? Well, much better, thank you, away. Jiang Li was also relieved after hearing this, because he really regarded Harleen as a friend, otherwise he cared so much about the other party. Okay, do you need me to take you home? No thanks, I can get back myself. Harleen didn't plan to stick to Jiang Li so much, although she wanted to be, but she also understood what it was to point to the end. Too much would cause the other party's disgust. Okay, then you be more careful. That. Can you hug me before you go? Hearing this, Jiang Li shook his head helplessly. As long as you don't dislike it. Poof. Before Jiang Li finished speaking, Harleen took the initiative to hug him and made a dull sound. Really? What else could Jiang Li say? So he had to pat Harleen on the back and hug each other quietly. Sign into Harley Quinn, reward, roaming shooter, special gift of ebony and white ivory. In an instant, a large amount of knowledge of gun skills flooded into Jiang Li's mind, and the 2 guns of ebony and white ivory had been automatically stored in the system backpack. I really didn't expect that this period of time triggered the reward of signing in and punching out. And the object of this check-in is still Harley Quinn? Jiang Li gently pushed Harleen away and looked at her carefully, but she is still the quiet girl. Could it be the wrong judgment of the system? How is it possible that without meeting the Joker, he has already turned into Harley Quinn himself? Isn't that impossible? Could it be some butterfly effect or something? Harleen was looked at by Jiang Li's gaze, and her shy little face was red, but she did not avoid it at all, and secretly straightened her chest and presented her beauty to Jiang Li. Episode 7. Alas, that's it. Harleen saw Jiang Li, who sent her home farther and farther away, and her heart began to feel a little empty, and she was still looking forward to a kiss before parting. Although she said that she didn't need to send her home, after careful consideration, Jiang Li thought that it was still a little dangerous for girls to walk at night, so he decided to send Harleen home. Jiang Li's back went farther and farther, and after the person had disappeared, Harleen reluctantly withdrew her eyes and turned around, taking out her key. When Harleen returned to her apartment, she threw herself on the soft bed, hugged her pillow, and carefully recalled the night. Jiang Li first came to save her like an angel, and then he was in that terrifying mall, protecting her and inspiring her. She cried to death. Harleen gradually drifted her gaze to the wooden hammer she had placed by the door, which was the first thing Jiang Li gave her, and Harleen began to laugh when she thought of this. If it was in the form of a comic, perhaps Harleen's head had begun to float pink hearts by now. It has to be a memorial. Harleen ran out of bed, stumbled to pick up the wooden hammer, then sat back on the bed, picked up her favorite lipstick, and began to scribble on it like a little girl. Fortunately, she has some drawing foundation. Harleen drew cue prints of herself and Jiang Li on a wooden hammer, and their respective names on their heads, and their names were covered with red love hearts. Another big love heart was drawn between the two, and in the middle of the love was written in English, the love of life, a lifetime lover. After painting, Harleen's little face couldn't help but start to turn red, and then she held back her shyness and wrote various expressions of love on the rest of the wooden hammer with some small graffiti. When she was done, Harleen fell backwards, lay on the bed and looked at her most perfect masterpiece with a smile on her face, and then held the wooden hammer in her arms, hoping that all the words of love on it could come true. Gradually, Harleen's eyelids began to slowly lower, holding the wooden hammer and falling asleep. Early the next morning, ding ding. The alarm clock sounded, directly waking up Harleen, who was dreaming. Harleen sat up and yawned, then knew what day she was, and it was her first job at the Arkham Asylum. After washing up and taking care of himself, before going out, he said to the wooden hammer lying quietly on the bed, "Wait for my mother to come back." After a journey, Harleen arrives at the rumored Arkham Asylum, which houses many deranged criminals. Even most of the criminals in Arkham Asylum were sent in by Batman himself, including many notorious supervillains. I don't know why, Harleen found the place of Arkham Madhouse. Obviously it is daytime, and after getting closer, you will find that the sky will get darker and darker, and even lightning and thunder. It's just weird. After Harleen walked into the Arkham Asylum, she came to the office of Arkham Dean Quasi Sharp. Quissy stood up and shook Harleen's hand in the same way as Harleen, then walked with Harleen on the way to the patient room. During this time, Quissy said to Harleen, "The patient you are going to treat this time is somewhat extraordinary, and you can't believe a word of what he says." Harleen was also confused after hearing this. Isn't she a mental patient, as for being so nervous? In short, you just have a number in your heart. Arrived. When Quissy arrived at her destination, she opened the door to the ward, and Harleen looked inside. Only one light was a dark room with lights on. The light shone on the man in a hospital gown, with green hair and pale skin. After Harleen walked in, she noticed that the green-haired man was strapped to a chair, and there were 2 guards with shotguns outside. She didn't understand why this patient had so much guarding power, until she took out the green-haired man's information from her briefcase. Joker, whose real name and origin are unknown, is one of the worst and most frenzied criminals in Gotham City. The information of the clown can be said to be the shortest among the patients, but it is also the most frightening, the name clown alone. Harleen then knew that the patient she was going to treat this time was actually the most famous criminal clown in Gotham City. And it seems that every time the Joker enters the Arkham Asylum, every time it is an epic criminal personally captured by Batman, or even personally escorted. Wait, every time it was Batman to capture. Harleen discovered what she thought was the most crucial of them. "Kahaha, hello, beautiful young lady. Tell me, huh?" The clown was suddenly stunned when asked. How did he feel that the woman in front of him was a little different from the previous psychiatrist? "Every time you come in, are you personally captured and escorted by Batman?" A crazy thought popped into Harleen's head, lingering in her head. Gahahaha. If it comes to Batman, then the Joker will definitely be happy to have a good chat with others. As long as I show up every time, the Bat will definitely follow. Why? Because he really loves me miserably. We are actually the same kind of people. How did you do it? A bright light appeared in Harleen's eyes, and she couldn't wait to know the answer and ask the Joker. Kahahaha. The corners of the clown's mouth rose wildly, reaching a strange height, and instead of answering Harleen's question, he said, "You have someone you want to grab their attention. I have a way to make him love you, and you're the only one in my eyes." The Joker's words seemed to have strange magic, and Harleen's breathing began to intensify after listening to it, and her eyes began to be full of desire for the method in the Joker's mouth. "Tell me." The clown saw that Harleen was no longer a normal person at this time, and immediately laughed maniacally. Kahahaha. Bang bang. The clown was laughing and banging his head against the table, as if he wasn't afraid of pain at all. "This lady, first we have to cooperate, then help me get out of here, and also, give me a gun." Episode 8. Jiang Li rarely didn't sleep this morning, because he didn't know why, and there were always some strange feelings in his heart, as if something terrible was born of him. So he planned to come out for a walk. Jiang Li looked at the sky of Gotham City. It was still cloudy, even during the day. He was used to it. It's a pity that he didn't check in on the Scarecrow last time, otherwise he might have some magical abilities now. Ha ha ha, can you catch up with me? Small bats. Suddenly, Jiang Li heard a voice full of teasing in his tone, and Jiang Li heard the prestige, only to see a woman dressed in revealing clothes, like a bunny girl, appear in his field of vision. Jiang Li didn't recognize who this woman was for the first time, but he only felt that she was very familiar. But the bunny girl costume on her body could be said to be everywhere in the red light district casino. Jiang Li did not recognize her for the first time. "Stop, White Rabbit." Then there was another shout in that direction. Jiang Li then knew that this woman dressed very much like a bunny girl was one of Gotham's villains, White Rabbit. Suddenly, Jiang Li felt that the coquettish drink just now was a bit like a person he knew, but it had been processed by voice change, so it was difficult to distinguish. And in the next second, the owner of the coquettish drink appeared, and he saw the Batgirl in the bat suit appear in Jiang Li's eyes, and he also knew that it was his college classmate Barbara. "Hee hee, surprise you." The White Rabbit smiled charmingly, then jumped to an unlucky passerby, raised his hand and injected homemade venom into him. AAA. The unlucky passerby's body muscles instantly swelled, and the green tendons on his body burst out, turning into a giant more than 2 meters. The unlucky passerby's eyes were red, obviously as if he had lost his mind, and he swung his fists at the surrounding things and began to wreak havoc, instantly scaring away the surrounding passers-by. Seeing this, Barbara had to give up chasing the White Rabbit, turned her head to solve the unlucky passerby who lost his mind, and several bat darts shot out in an instant. Seeing this, the White Rabbit smiled slightly and turned around and ran, but when she passed by Jiang Li, who was watching the play, she stopped. Huh? What a handsome guy. The White Rabbit blinked a pair of big eyes and circled around Jiang Li, and the rabbit ears on his head would inevitably accidentally touch Jiang Li's nose. This made Jiang Li's nose couldn't help but itch, frowning and looking at the White Rabbit who looked at him curiously. Has this woman never seen a handsome guy? As for it, he is not afraid of the White Rabbit. To put it bluntly, the White Rabbit is just fast, and in terms of hand-to-hand combat ability, it is far inferior to him. The White Rabbit's naughty nature began to attack, and began to approach Jiang Li, and began to provoke Jiang Li with his proud body and rabbit ears. And Jiang Li was waiting for the sound of the system. Sign into Gianna Hudson, the White Rabbit, reward Super Charm. Super Charm, the opposite sex has a large increase in its liking for itself. It's just a pity that Jiang Li thinks that this reward has no utility for him. After all, he is a person with a girlfriend. How can he care about this charm? The future is not necessarily, huh? You suddenly look good. The more the White Rabbit looked at Jiang Li, the more handsome the other party looked, and his eyes even began to get a little confused. On the other side, the unlucky passerby who lost his mind was knocked to the ground by Barbara with various attacks, and then turned around to see the White Rabbit leaning on Jiang Li's body, and also kissed Jiang Li's face, leaving red lip prints. White Rabbit. Barbara instantly ran in the direction of White Rabbit and Jiang Li like a cat fried, but Jiang Li was faster than Barbara, and I saw that Jiang Li took out a black pistol from nowhere and pointed it at the head of the White Rabbit. The man who was ruthless after signing in and punching the card, pulled the ruthless Jiang Li and said, "This lady, please stay away from me, I am not familiar with you." The cold touch made the White Rabbit know that this was a real guy, but the White Rabbit smiled without fear at all, but stretched out his finger and stroked Jiang Li's chin. What a heartless little man, I remember you. As soon as the words fell, the White Rabbit turned into a white smoke and disappeared in front of Jiang Li. Seeing that the White Rabbit had fled, Barbara stomped her foot fiercely and said angrily, "Abominable White Rabbit, next time I must catch you." Then Barbara trotted to Jiang Li. "This gentleman, are you all right?" While asking, Barbara also circled around, scanning every position on Jiang Li's body in all directions, until she saw the flaming red lip prints on Jiang Li's face. Barbara's face suddenly became very bad, and she took out a handkerchief inside her homemade universal belt and wiped it on Jiang Li's face. "I haven't even kissed, how to let others take the lead." Then Barbara reacted. She is now the identity of Batgirl instead of Barbara, and Batgirl and Jiang Li met for the first time. The first encounter is so intimate, it is inevitable that people will be suspicious. Ahem, if you're okay. Barbara tugged at the corners of her mouth and quickly withdrew her handkerchief. Suddenly, Barbara thought that she was now a famous figure, and it was a good choice to take the lead for her feelings. "This gentleman, I see that your face is peach blossom. You will definitely have a true Destiny girl appear in the near future. You have to take good care, especially women of the same age, most likely wearing glasses. The most important thing is that it must be your classmates. Also, she may have a father who is a police officer. You pay more attention." Barbara learned the fortune-telling quotes she read on the internet, and heard others say that people in Chongguo believed in this. And Jiang Li also happens to be a Chinese, so he carries out ideological work on Jiang Li with private goods, and if he succeeds, then Prince Charming will marry the princess. But Barbara's words made it clear that this person was herself, and the implication became explicit. But who knew that in the next second, Jiang Li took out his mobile phone from his pocket and released the recording of Barbara just now. And Barbara smiled and said, "Good performance, Xiaoba." Episode 9. You. Barbara's face changed slightly when she was told her true identity, and she quickly looked around, and was relieved to find that there were no passers-by. "You wait for me." Barbara glared at Jiang Li, then took out the microcomputer, briefly attacked the nearby surveillance, ran to the uninhabited alley, changed clothes, and came out. Simple denim shorts reveal fair slender thighs, calves wrapped in white multicolored striped knee-length socks, an ordinary short sleeve inside, and a bat-like purple coat on the outside. This outfit can be said to be like a senior otaku girl, but Barbara is cute in it. Barbara came to Jiang Li, put her small fists in her waist and asked, "How did you recognize me?" "Of course, because I am a traverser, I can say that I knew that you were a Batgirl in my previous life." Jiang Li didn't say that, but casually coped with it. "Eyes, it is said that eyes are the windows of the soul. I can feel that you are my best college friend." Who knew that after Jiang Li's words made Barbara listen to it, her face instantly turned red, her head was like steaming, and her whole head was dizzy. "Oh hey yes, I really hate you. Don't say it like that, I'll be shy too." Barbara began to giggle. Jiang Li also shook his head funny when he saw this. He had long known that Barbara would blush and giggle when she was praised, just like Kyoba. But what Jiang Li didn't know was that the reason why Barbara was like this was because of himself, and if she was praised by others, Barbara would not show such an expression. Immediately, Barbara thought of the message sent to her by her father, Gordon, which made Barbara wary. "You can't let others get a head start." "Away, have you met any women lately, huh? Why ask this all of a sudden?" Jiang Li was confused when he was asked. How did Barbara, who would not have asked these questions in previous years, suddenly changed her sex. It's like a police officer interrogating a prisoner. What case are you suspected of? And confess your gang. Speak quickly, speak quickly. Well, I met one recently. Barbara's eyes gradually sharpened. It seems that she has slacked off, and was taken advantage of by other women, and actually stole home when she was away. And later, Jiang Li was dragged by Barbara, who was inexplicably serious, to walk to the mall, so that he walked for an afternoon. After finally finishing it, when Jiang Li was about to enter his apartment, a sense of foreboding suddenly arose in his heart. It can be said that he has been feeling this way since he got the ability to roam the gunner, perhaps from the intuition of the sharpshooter. This feeling. It's terrible. Jiang Li couldn't ignore this feeling. He went directly upstairs into his room, changed his clothes, and went out again. Relying on Harleen's inside and out, the Joker finally escaped from the Arkham Asylum. And the Joker also takes Harleen to a chemical factory, talking about his method of attracting Harleen to Jiang Li. Harleen walked a few steps, looked at the lowest chemical pool under her feet, frowned her willow eyebrows, and her tone was a little angry. I will do everything I can to bring you out of Arkham Asylum. But you brought me here. What the is it? After speaking, Harleen raised the pistol in her hand and aimed it at the clown with the corners of her mouth rising wildly. And the original weak Harleen became different after the night she passed through the Gotham Mall. Ha, but ma'am, this is really the best way. The clown raised his hands in a French military salute, and continued to Harleen with a smile. I promise that as soon as you jump, it will be completely new. Become like me, attract Batman, attract the person you care about. Your wishful Lang Jun will fall madly in love with you. But Harleen is no longer the girl who is crazy about the clown, although the object of her crush is only a different person, but it does not mean that she is stupid. Bang! Harleen answered the clown with a bullet that turned into a streamer and grazed his ear. The clown touched the bullet cut wound on his ear stunned, and looking at his own blood on his finger, the clown grinned again. Gahahaha. To be honest, it was the first time he had seen such a crazy but sensible woman, which was contradictory, but also attractive. You're the funniest, craziest, and weirdest woman I've ever met, but... The clown laughed and quickly pulled out a pistol from his waist and pointed it at Harleen. I won't see you again. Bang! The speed is not comparable to Harleen, a novice with a gun. Just when Harleen has no time to react and is about to be shot by the clown with a bullet, the mutation protrudes. The bullet shot by the clown was suddenly killed by another bullet, directly intercepting the clown's bullet in the middle. Moreover, perhaps only the owner of the strange bullet knew that his bullet actually directly shattered the Joker's bullet, and then his bullet hit the ground. What? The clown still had the expression of the corners of his mouth rising wildly, tilting his head slightly and full of question marks at the scene in front of him. It seems that I came at the right time. Both the Joker and Harleen heard the prestige, and saw a man in a black trench coat and a cowboy hat standing from a height looking down on them. And when Harleen saw the figure, her heart immediately burst into flames, and she called out the name of the figure with a smile on her face. Leave. Episode 10. Jiang Li jumped lightly, landed between the clown and Harleen, and looked at Harleen with concerned eyes. Harleen, are you okay? Bang! In the next second, Jiang Li raised his hand without moving his eyes, and after pressing the trigger, the white ivory fired a bullet, accurately hitting the hand of the clown who wanted to sneak up on the pistol. Seeing that the pistol in his hand was instantly shot away, the clown had a very high evaluation of this. The marksmanship is good. Why haven't I heard of a character like you in Gotham? No comment. Jiang Li turned his head and looked at the clown indifferently, but in the next second, his sharp eyes saw several dark muzzles appear at the exit. Jiang Li quickly took Harleen's hand and ran behind the wide pillar on the side. Suddenly, sure enough, several big men appeared at the exit, shooting wildly with machine guns, but strangely avoiding the clown, and the bullets hit the pillar where Jiang Li and Harleen were dodging. Kahaha, enjoy this beautiful night to the fullest, if you live to live. The clown laughed and took a few steps back, then turned around and left the chemical factory, leaving only a group of clown's little brothers in the fire suppression. You have to break the game. Jiang Li found that the pillar they were on had almost collapsed by the strafing fire, and countless pieces of rubble continued to fly out. Then, Jiang Li threw out ebony and white ivory in both directions of him, and black and white streamers streaked through, forming a beautiful arc in the air. Double eagle roundabout. White ivory and ebony have sharp blades under the grips, and the speed is so fast that the clown's thugs do not react in time. Ahem. The blade instantly cut through their necks, blood suddenly gushed out, and 3 people lost their lives, causing the suppressed firepower to decrease. Jiang Li raised his hand upwards and caught the white ivory and ebony that flew back. After a pause, Harleen on the side opened her mouth, and then love appeared in her eyes, and her tone was full of adoration. So handsome. Stay here, don't move. After Jiang Li told Harleen, he ran out immediately. When the clown thugs saw the target, they turned their guns and frantically poured bullets towards the fast-moving Jiang Li. Miraculously, Jiang Li's speed was extremely fast, and the bullets only grazed the side of each other's clothes, and even the clown thugs looked stupid. Soon, Jiang Li ran to another pillar, stepped on the pillar with both feet, and immediately came a somersault. In midair, the bullets that wiped his hair and his ears could not shake Jiang Li's indifferent eyes. Multiple headshots. Bang bang. 3 bullets accurately and powerfully hit the heads of the 3 clown thugs standing at the door, and suddenly the blood flew and instantly lost their vitality. After Jiang Li landed, he felt the strange appearance of the ground, and several footsteps faintly entered Jiang Li's ears, indicating that there were more clown thugs on the way. Immediately, Jiang Li's eyes narrowed and he began to run towards the exit, and when he came to the exit, he quickly raised the white ivory and ebony in his hands. Bang bang bang. Random shooting plus multiple headshots. Under the stunned eyes of the clown thugs, Jiang Li waved the two guns in his hand, seemingly chaotic marksmanship, but every bullet shot out accurately hit the clown thug's brains. Plop. As the last clown thug fell to the ground in response, Jiang Li's indifferent eyes scanned all the dead clown thugs on the ground. Although the two guns of white ivory and ebony are real firearms and need to be replenished, his characteristic after getting the roaming gunner is unlimited bullets, so perfectly made up for the weakness of changing bullets. Ha ha ha, I'm really too handsome from you. Harleen jumped in front of Jiang Li with her feet on her feet, eager to kiss her the face. Jiang Li looked at the happy Harleen with a hint of pampering, and then he felt a vibrating feeling from the mobile phone in his pocket. He took it out and saw that it was still Zatana calling. Jiang Li directly connected the phone. Because the distance was relatively close, Harleen could hear the content of the call. Xiaoza, is there something wrong? Can't I find you if I'm okay? Really? Zatana on the phone continued after a little coquettishness. Can you come to my house for a meal? My dad, he wants to see you. Okay, see you tomorrow. Jiang Li listened to Zatana's love words for several minutes, but he didn't know that Harleen next to her had a more and more ugly face. After Jiang Li hung up the phone, Harleen said with a smile, the one on the phone just now. Is it your girlfriend? Although there was some element of knowingly asking, they had fast-forwarded to the point of meeting their parents, and Harleen felt an unprecedented sense of crisis. What must she do? Yes, her name is Zatana. Jiang Li very frankly admitted his relationship with Zatana, and he also saw that Harleen did not seem to treat him as an ordinary friend. Okay, let's not talk about this, we should go. Just as Jiang Li turned to leave with Harleen, suddenly he heard the sound of running behind him. When Jiang Li turned to look, he saw Harleen running straight in the direction of the chemical pool. Harleen! Jiang Li's face changed, and he used all his strength to run towards Harleen. Without hesitation, Harleen jumped off the tall building and fell straight down to the lowest chemical pool. Gee! Jiang Li also jumped down without hesitation at the same time, caught Harleen in midair at a faster speed, and held the other party in his arms. Then he turned around in midair and fired the hooklock at the iron bar hooklock gun above, swinging himself and Harleen to the safety of the ground. Jiang Li used himself as a meat pad and fell to the ground so that Harleen would not suffer much harm. You're crazy! Jiang Li immediately scolded. Who knows that Jiang Li's current reprimand does not seem to work for Harleen, which also reminds Jiang Li that the system signed on Harleen, and the other party has become a similar crazy Harley Quinn. Hallie's eyes were full of Jiang Li's figure, full of slow love for him, and said with a smile, Leave, you really love me. All the actions just now were to determine whether there was a place for her in Jiangyuan, and if not, then she would only die alone. Even if there is, if Jiang Li has no means, both of them will die, which is why the system determines that Harleen has become a crazy Harley, and already has some reckless style of doing things. After speaking, Harley pulled Jiang Li's collar and forcibly kissed the other party. Jiang Li was stunned by Harley's operation. Episode 11. On the Gotham Road in the middle of the night, there were two figures, among which a man in a black trench coat was carrying a woman with white thighs, a white coat, and a cowboy hat. The two are Jiang Li and Harley, who just came out of the chemical factory. At this time, Harley's face was full of spring breeze, and it was obvious that something had happened just now that made Harley very happy. Hey ha! Harley held up the cowboy hat that Jiang Li was wearing for her, imitating the common calls of cowboys in the West, and was in a very happy mood. Jiang Li felt that the fleshy thighs touched by his hands were shaking constantly, and he said with a little headache, Okay, don't make trouble, I won't care about you if you make trouble again. Who knew that Harley didn't eat this set? She put the cowboy hat on her head again, and then wrapped her hands around Jiang Li's neck, and whispered in her ear with her lips, You won't leave me alone, you love me miserably. After speaking, he also kissed Jiang Li's face fiercely, leaving a gorgeous lip print. Alas, Jiang Li only felt tired. He had seen a very popular believer, and he had never seen such a general believer. What would you do without me? Jiang Li couldn't help but complain about the current Harley. It can be said that every time he comes to the rescue, the first time he met was like this, and it is also like this now. I can't do it without you. Harley lay her side face on Jiang Li's head and said with a smile, So don't leave me in the future, I'll be obedient. Then it depends on your performance. Now only Jiang Li is distressed, because he doesn't know how to explain these things to Zatana. The shadows of the two gradually lengthened under the street lamps, and it was inevitable that there would be some fights on the road, and Harley's laughter was getting farther and farther away. Jiang Li finally carried Harley home, and along the way, Harley kept making physical contact, which was the most difficult journey. Plop, Jiang Li put Harley on the bed, and then decided to leave. Who knew that in the next second, Harley's slender white thighs suddenly wrapped around Jiang Li's waist, so that the other party did not continue walking. Alas, Jiang Li raised his hands to make a French military salute, and helplessly turned to look at Harley who was looking at him with a smile. Harleen, what exactly do you want to do? Jiang Li still calls Harley Harleen at this time, because Harley said before she came back that she needed to make some changes, such as a cute title. Harley Quinn is about to become Harleen's new name, and Harleen instead becomes Jiang Li's nickname for Harley, limited to Jiang Li alone. Hee, you don't have to go back tonight. After Harley's legs let go of Jiang Li, she got up and knelt on the bed, and then brought her whole body close to Jiang Li, brought her lips close to the latter's ear, and said softly, "I recently learned a new dance online, I'll show you." When the words fell, Harley pushed Jiang Li to the sofa and sat on it, and walked into the bathroom by herself. Under Jiang Li's eyes, Harley quickly walked out. The other party walked out with charming eyes, gold wire glasses pulled down slightly, white coat slightly down, exposing the white and smooth shoulders in the air. At this time, beauty and charm became synonymous with Harley, and she gave wonderful dances to the people she loved the most. At this time, Jiang Li saw that there was unfinished red wine on the table next to him, and he picked up the red wine and took a sip. Just when Jiang Li wanted to continue drinking, Harley straddled his lap, gently snatched the red wine in Jiang Li's hand, and drank the red wine in the glass. Harley's blonde hair became extremely beautiful in Jiang Li's eyes, and Jiang Li's strong body became the fuse of Harley's love. At this time, the two people's faces were rosy, and the atmosphere gradually turned pink, and just when the two looked at each other, the spark of suspected love was erupting in the eyes of the two. The two kissed together, and Jiang Li took the opportunity to take off Harley's glasses, and Harley also took the opportunity to smooth down Jiang Li's black trench coat. Gotham City outside began to have storms, and so did the apartment rooms inside. Early the next morning, a touch of sunshine. Well, Gotham basically has no sunlight, only a faint glow shining inside the room. The room was a mess, with scattered clothes and man-made furniture arranged in extremely irregular shapes, and two people lying asleep on the bed hugging each other. Jiang Li was the first to wake up. He first looked around sleepily, and then noticed Harley, who was sleeping quietly in his arms. Only then did he know what had happened last night. Perhaps Jiang Li's awakening woke up Harley, so that Harley also woke up. She also looked around in confusion, and then hugged Jiang Li's waist, leaning her head on Jiang Li's chest and wanting to continue to sleep. "Okay Harleen, it's time for me to get up." Harley made a sound like a cat coquettish, which made Jiang Li couldn't help but roll his eyes. Jiang Li stood up directly, and Harley hung on him like a koala, never meaning to come down. "You're such a candy, Harleen. What is cowhide candy? Does that mean I'm your candy?" Harley raised her head and looked at Jiang Li affectionately and continued, "So do you want to taste my first candy of the morning now?" Episode 12 finally came out in the gentle township, thanks to him paying some public food, otherwise Harley would really not let him go back. However, Jiang Li does not plan to let Harley continue to work as a psychiatrist, because the place where she works is a ghost place like the Arkham Asylum. So he asked Harley to quit her job, and Harley was very willing to obey Jiang Li's arrangement after getting the public food, and Jiang Li raised Harley from now on. It's just that now Jiang Li doesn't have a serious job, so he needs to get money through some special means, and he has a good way. But now it's imperative to contact Zatana and go to her house for lunch. After calling Zatana, soon a vortex portal appeared in front of Jiang Li. After Jiang Li walked in, he saw Zatana and Zatara sitting at the dining table waiting for him. "Sorry, I'm late." It was not his girlfriend Zatana who answered Jiang Li, but her father Zatara. Zatara said with an amiable look, "It's not too late. It can be said that it's just right." Young man sit casually. At present, it seems that Zatara is not hostile to him, and it seems that he is still relatively open to his daughter's love. After Jiang left to thank him, he came and sat down next to Zatana. Spell. Zatara whispered the incantation, and soon the table with nothing instantly crossed a streamer, and a hearty lunch suddenly appeared on the table. Jiang Li couldn't help but raise his eyebrows after reading it. To be honest, it was really a very convenient thing to do things with magic. The three began to eat a delicious lunch, in which Zatara asked all kinds of questions as if examining his son-in-law. Zatara couldn't help but nod after hearing this. He is currently very satisfied with his daughter's boyfriend, both in terms of manners and personality. And then came the question he was most curious about. After wiping his mouth with a tissue, he asked Jiang Li the question he wanted to know. "Li, did you come into contact with magic before you met Zatana?" "Actually, no, Uncle Zatara. To be honest, it was only after meeting Xiaoza that I first saw what magic was like." Zatara caressed his beard after hearing this. He naturally saw that Jiang Li was not lying. Since this is the case, then Jiang Li's qualifications are too powerful. It's just natural material for learning magic. "Then leave, uncle. I ask you, if I were to take you as an apprentice and teach you magic, would you accept it?" Jiang Li made Zatara feel like accepting an apprentice. After all, his moral conduct and morality passed, and his qualifications were also exceeded, even if Jiang Li's age was a little too late to learn magic. But Jiang Li's qualifications perfectly compensate for this. Zatana's eyes lit up with anticipation. If Jiang Li became her father's apprentice, then their time together would increase greatly. But Jiang Li didn't think so. Although Jiang Li really wants to stay on Zatara's side to learn magic and be with his girlfriend, Zatara's training method is closed. You can't leave here without leaving the division, and there are so many villain heroes waiting for him to check in on the Gotham side. Jiang Li had to refuse Zatara's kindness. "I'm sorry, Uncle Zatara, I don't have any intention of learning magic right now. and if I do, I'll definitely visit my house in the future. Zatara did not show an unexpected look. On the contrary, Jiang Li's refusal was also within Zatara's expectations. Before, he could see that Jiang Li did not show impatience towards him and Zatana, indicating that Jiang Li had a dispensable mentality for magic. After that, Jiang Li and Zatara father and daughter talked a lot, and it was almost time to chat, and Jiang Li was ready to leave. Uncle Zatara, can I shake your hand? Of course. After Jiang Li shook hands with Zatara, he didn't hear the pop-up of the system to sign in and check in successfully. Jiang Li couldn't help but be a little disappointed. It seems that the way he clocked in and checked in was wrong. Zatara, as a senior, caught the subtle disappointment in Jiang Li's eyes, and asked curiously, "You seem to be disappointed?" And Jiang Li naturally did not panic, but said with a light smile, "Actually, I feel some sadness that Uncle Zatara did not keep my son-in-law." After hearing this, Zatara was slightly stunned, and then couldn't help laughing. "Ahahaha, you kid is really interesting. Remember to come back next time." Obviously, Zatara likes Jiang Li's way of getting along, and he is already very satisfied with Jiang Li's son-in-law. Jiang Li then stood in front of the vortex portal and said goodbye to his girlfriend Zatana. Zatana hugged Jiang Li, buried her head in Jiang Li's chest, and said, "I will miss you." "I'll miss you too, Xiaoza." Zatana didn't want to change the atmosphere so sadly, and after she let go of Jiang Li, she raised her arm and showed Jiang Li her white muscleless arm. "The next time we meet, I may surpass my father and become the most powerful and greatest magician in the world." Jiang Li shook his head a little amusedly, looked at Zatana with spoiled eyes, and gently scratched the bridge of her nose. But suddenly, Zatana's nose moved, she furrowed her eyebrows, and smelled a fragrance that only women have, and this fragrance was not hers. Who is that vixen? Episode 13. Jiang Li walked out of the vortex portal and returned to his apartment in Gotham City. Phew, it's so dangerous. Jiang Li was almost killed by a firewood knife just now, and Zatana started a fire. Her hair was fluttering, just like Jiao Shuana in the Hokage. Fortunately, he kissed each other in time so that the other party's anger fell at a very fast speed, and Zatana had no choice but to compromise, allowing Jiang Li to go to those entertainment places less. It seems that the other party thinks that he went to that kind of chaotic entertainment place, and in short, he survived this difficulty unharmed. Go down and buy some groceries. Jiang Li subconsciously touched his pocket and found that there was nothing but air. Jiang Li scratched his head helplessly and muttered, "It's really nerve-wracking. Obviously the money I earned last month, how come I spend it again? There is no way." Jiang Li can only go to work to make money. As we all know, what is the most lacking thing in Gotham City? The last thing that is lacking is gangsters and criminals, and what is not lacking in gangsters? In addition to money is still money, so Jiang Li decided to go to the gang to work to make money, and come to a perfect one-day million. Afterwards, Jiang Li left his apartment and rode his locomotive to the construction site he knew best. Soon, Jiang Li came to the dock with many containers, and even during the day, there were many gangsters doing dirty trades, and his duty is to save innocent money. After Jiang Li parked his locomotive, he put on a homemade gas mask, jumped on the container with both feet, and kept moving at a height. Finally, he came to the trading place and saw Kopot, the diminutive penguin, and Black Mask Roman wearing a black skull mask. They led their gang to trade here, and if it were normal, they, as the boss of the gang, would naturally not come to trade in person. But the changes in recent years have forced them to do so, because of Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl and the new Robin. And in recent years, a man wearing a black trench coat and a gas mask has suddenly appeared, robbing when he sees the gangster trade, and the hand is much heavier than Batman. Many gangsters have been brutally killed, and many people are still lying in the ICU. The penguin came to the Black Mask and asked him solemnly, "Have you made sure that no one is following you?" "No, what about you?" "Neither do I." At this time, the penguin and the Black Mask relaxed, relieved in their hearts, and finally had a normal transaction. Suddenly, as if sensing something, the two suddenly looked in the same direction, and they only saw a crow landing on the container. Just before the two could breathe a sigh of relief, the vision in the sky made the two tense their nerves again. Dumb. A large group of crows hovered in the air, constantly circling over them, as if feeling their death. These visions made the penguins and Black Mask's respective gangster brothers panic instantly, which made them agree that he was coming. "Here he is. He must be coming. We're all going to die. I don't want to die yet." The cowardice of the gangster brothers made the penguins and the Black Mask roar at the same time. "Shut up. If this is released, it will definitely be ridiculed, and before the enemy has appeared, his own people will already have a collapsed mentality, which is simply ridiculous. Don't worry, I'm prepared this time." Black Mask's eyes were cold, and he straightened his suit and said. The penguin frowned and suddenly thought of something, and then his face was happy. "Did you say that?" The two gangster bosses looked at each other and smiled, and instantly felt much more secure in their hearts, and they were immediately extremely confident that this transaction could go smoothly. Bang bang. As the gunshots rang out, their gangster brothers were shot in the head and fell to the ground in response. The Black Mask and the Penguin Man followed the sound of the gunshot, and saw Jiang Li, wearing a black trench coat, a cowboy hat and a gas mask on his face, appear in their eyes. Hello, two old friends. Although they met for the first time, but this title made Black Mask and Penguin burn with anger in their hearts. It can be said that many of their transactions were made because of Jiang Li, and they couldn't wait to make this person cramp. And this time the other party actually used a gun. You bastard. If you dare to appear in front of me today, you don't want to leave here alive. Death knell. As the Black Mask shouted, a man in body armor stood high behind him, the mask only showing his left eye. He holds a long knife in his right hand and a pistol in his left hand. Such a familiar costume made Jiang Li recognize the other party at first glance. And the other party was one of Gotham's villains, the Death Knell. Knell, full name Slade Wilson. He is a powerful mercenary and a superhuman belonging to the category of enhanced humans. If you pick the best candidate in Gotham City to fight hand-to-hand with Batman, then Knell is the best candidate. The highlight record is to single out members of the Justice League such as Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and Flash, which is a tricky opponent for Jiang Li now. It turns out that you guys found helpers. No wonder you have the audacity to run out and trade. Episode 14. Two superhumans are facing each other, both wearing masks that hide their true appearance, and they are also masters of guns. Just when Jiang Li and the Death Knell confronted, the Penguin and the Black Mask glanced at each other, and the figure slowly walked back, entering the black shadow that no one knew. Only the two of them were left. Black eating black, this kind of thing. This is not something that a superhero would do. Which one are you? The Death Knell behaved frivolously, and neither the knife nor the gun were aimed at Jiang Li, which shows that the other party did not put the latter in his eyes at all. Jiang Li naturally saw it, and the corners of his mouth rose and said, "This is none of your business, don't hinder me from making money, huh?" The Death Knell couldn't help but be a little handsome, and slowly came to Jiang Li with steps, and the distance between the two was extremely dangerous. Don't get in my way of making money, humph. As soon as the Death Knell fell, he raised the katana in his hand and quickly slashed towards Jiang Li's neck like lightning. Oh! Jiang Li's eyes became cold and sharp, and he raised his hand to resist the katana of the Death Knell with the blade under the white ivory grip. Two sharp metals slammed together, and the friction suddenly sparked. Then the Death Knell raised his legs and kicked Jiang Li's body fiercely. Jiang Li raised his other hand to block the blow, took a few steps back with the force, and immediately raised the white ivory ebony and fired two bullets towards the Death Knell. Bang bang! As if guessing Jiang Li's attack, the Death Knell immediately lay on the ground, dodged two bullets, and then raised his pistol and pulled the trigger. Jiang Li's footsteps were galloping, his body quickly dodged the bullet of the Death Knell like a ghost, and then ran behind the container. Gee! Seeing that his attack had no effect, the Death Knell suddenly turned ugly, and in the next second, the target of the attack was him. I saw Jiang Li running out from behind the container, and two guns burst out bullets to the Death Knell. Bang bang! Knell quickly got up and used the katana in his hand to smash several bullets as he ran to dodge the bullets. Aha! The Death Knell's eyes froze, and he threw a smoke bomb in the direction of Jiang Li, and after colliding with the bullet in flight, white smoke burst out in the air. Tap-da-da! The Death Knell seized the opportunity and ran to Jiang Li and waved the katana in his hand to fight Jiang Li. The katana slashed through Eri's chest, cutting a hole in the black trench coat, and then Eri kicked the katana in Knell's hand with a roundhouse kick. The Death Knell was not stunned, and continued to fight with Jiang Li, who withdrew his two guns, and began to fight closely. Both are superhumans with physical strength to the limit of humans, and both have rich fighting skills, so they are comparable. And while the two were fighting, the Penguins and the Black Mask hiding in the dark were watching the situation. This guy obviously hasn't used a gun before, it's all about fists. Now it's on par with the Death Knell. The Penguin held the umbrella in his hand and said in a solemn tone, "We have to find a way to keep him here." The Black Mask squinted and said coldly, "I don't need you to say that, I know." It can be said that now is the best time for them to solve Jiang Li. There is a Death Knell this master to drag the other party. They only need to bring a bullet on Jiang Li to stabilize the victory. But now they are facing off in the white smoke. They can't see anyone outside, so in order to avoid accidentally injuring their own people, they have not moved. And this smoke bomb was thrown by the Death Knell. It doesn't matter, even if it hurts the Death Knell, as long as the money is in place, he can shut up. Black Mask's eyes were cold, and he immediately raised the pistol in his hand and shot at the Death Knell and Jiang Li, who were about to fight in the smoke. Phew! With a breaking sound, a bat-shaped dart accurately shot away the pistol in Black Mask's hand. And the Black Mask and the Penguin Man saw the bat dart on the ground, and their faces suddenly became ugly. They knew too well who the owner of this dart was. They looked in the same direction, and sure enough, they saw a black figure standing above several containers, that is, Batman. On the other side, Jiang Li punched the Death Knell in the face, and then kicked the Death Knell back with a roundhouse kick. And he also heard an unexpected sound. Sign into the Death Knell and reward random character cards. Character card can summon characters who are 100% loyal, not limited to the DC world. Note, you can check in with the help of the hands of the characters. Bang! The Death Knell was repelled by Jiang Li and slammed into the container, and he realized that the situation was not good after seeing Batman above. Bang bang! After firing two bullets at Jiang Li, who wanted to pursue, he jumped into the water and fled the scene directly. This is running? Jiang Li turned around and saw that Batman knocked the Penguin Man and the Black Mask unconscious on the ground, and the speed was really fast. Wait, this one for you. They'll leave it to me. Batman handed a briefcase containing US dollars to Jiang Li, who walked over, and Jiang Li looked at Batman with strange eyes. Your cousin's messenger of justice actually took the initiative to give me this black money? It seems that he understood the meaning of Jiang Li's eyes, and saw the corners of Batman's mouth rise slightly. Don't worry, since you have a little tight hand recently, then take it and use it. It stands to reason that this box of money is also his money. As long as Jiang Li spends it, or deposits the money in the bank, it is equivalent to his money. After all, nearly 80% of the entire Gotham Bank is his, and it can be earned back in other ways. At this time, his tone did not look like Batman, but as Jiang Li's friend Bruce Wayne. Jiang Li didn't push around, took the briefcase directly, and said to Bruce with a smile, go to your house for dinner another day, and look at Jason's kid by the way. Because of the relationship between Jiang Li and Bruce, when Jiang Li visited Bruce's manor, he already knew Jason as Robin, and Nightwing Dick when he was the former Robin. Episode 15. Jiang Li thought about it. The successful sign-in on the death knell just now was triggered by successfully greeting the other party with his fist, so that is to say, wait. Jiang Li stopped Bruce, who wanted to leave with Black Mask and Penguin. What's wrong? Bruce looked back and wondered, only to see Jiang Li walking towards him with strides, snatching the two villains he was carrying in his hands. Bump. The two fists greeted the Black Mask and the Penguin man's face respectively, but Jiang Li did not hear the sound of the system. It seems that if you want to sign in on a man, you have to use aggressive physical contact for the other party, and after the experiment just now, you must also have the other party awake. And Bruce, who personally watched Jiang Li's actions, had several question marks on his head, and immediately asked, what do? Do you have a feud with them? It didn't. Jiang Li looked at Bruce, thinking about whether to punch the other in the face. Later, I thought about it. After all, the teacher is nameless, and there must be a reason to beat people, not to mention that the other party is still a friend he has known since childhood. Jiang Li smiled wordlessly, and patted Bruce's shoulder. In the future, if you blacken, I will not hesitate to give you 2 punches. Even Batman, one of the world's most powerful detectives, was stunned by Jiang Li's Riddler-like action. Jiang Li took the briefcase full of dollars and returned to his apartment. He took out a black card from the system space and looked at it repeatedly, and there was nothing special, just an ordinary card with only color. Why hasn't you told me how to use this system? It stands to reason that the system should not be accompanied by instructions for use, and this time I will go directly to it. My turn. Draw cards. Jiang Li was doing the duelist's card drawing motion, and shouted out the lines of the middle too, but the black card in his hand still didn't react, and Jiang Li scratched his head. Damn, this can't work. It's not enough to throw it casually, right? After speaking, Jiang Li directly threw the card casually. The black card fell on the ground, something magical happened, and the card began to emit white light. Lying groove, it's really okay. The light suddenly illuminated the entire room, and this dazzling light directly made Jiang Li raise his hand to block his eyes, and after a few seconds, the light disappeared. After Jiang Li lowered his hand, he saw a tall beauty with a graceful figure appear in front of his eyes, with lilac skin, wearing the iconic tight-fitting combat suit from the original work. He also holds an energy rifle that can switch between sniper and automatic modes, called Black Lily Kiss. Jiang Li didn't expect that this random character card would actually give him a game character, called Overwatch. Black Lily put down her Black Lily Kiss on the sofa, and then sat down on Jiang Li's bed, cocking her slender and beautiful legs. She looked at this room, and said with a slight disgust in her tone, this is completely for pigs, boss, how can you live in such a place? Jiang Li ignored Black Lily's poisonous tongue, but asked the question he wanted to know the most. Black Lily, do you remember your memories of the original world? The memory of the original world? What is that? After speaking, Black Lily walked in front of Jiang Li, gently straightened the latter's collar, and exhaled like a lawn with a hint of charm and said, I just remember that I am your most loyal subordinate, the most obedient and capable subordinate of the boss. Jiang Li nodded seriously after hearing this, so it seems that the system has handled it quite thoroughly. Either it is a character from the original world, but the memory is cleared and new memories are given, or directly create a character who looks exactly the same and has exactly the same abilities. Jiang Li guessed that the possibility behind would be greater, and now none of this mattered, because Black Lily had already begun to get started. What are you doing? Boss, your body is a little tense, you just went through the battle, so your faithful subordinates came to give you a full body massage. 3 days later, in the evening, in the darkness somewhere in Gotham. Here, the dark side of Gotham gathers, and the Joker sits in the middle of the square table, flanked by helpers he has worked so hard to find. Welcome friends to my... The clown said with a smile on his face, but he was interrupted before he could finish speaking. Less nonsense. Clown. You should know that we are all here for Batman, not to listen to your neurotic words. The person who spoke was the Scarecrow who had just been rescued from the Arkham Asylum, and now he still holds a grudge against Batman and the man he doesn't know. The Scarecrow's words were not refuted by others, and they all agreed silently. Their purpose is also to catch Batman, who has been in Arkham Asylum for an unknown number of times. Ha ha ha. That's right, you're so right, Jonathan, Scarecrow's name. Without the slightest expression of anger, the clown still had that crazy smile, and he continued, from tonight, we are going to have a big crazy game. Guys, are you ready to surprise our bats? Let's give the city the ultimate baptism. To the left of the clown sat the Scarecrow, the three-generation Belchman Shauna Belzer, and Bane. And the ones on his right are Killer Moth, Firefly, Death Shooter. It can be said that Batman's Arkham support fan group has gathered here and is about to launch a criminal riot against Gotham.